Yuji Itadori is on the radar. He finally started to show that classic shonen main character glow up, that certain power, the final nail in the coffin to make you think, yes, Yuji can be strong. Strong enough not only to grow as a character, but to also have strong relevance within the story. Because Yuji is already an amazing enough character, Gege takes extra care to show Yuji's mindset, his growths, his faults, his resolve and determination. But recently we see Yuji's actual strength as a sorcerer, and that power is what has a lot of folks interested in and jumping back into weekly Jujutsu Kaisen for. Now, as deep as Yuji's development is, it's once again resurfacing on why Yuji is the way that he is. What is the reason that he is so strong for, and how strong will he become in the future? Today we will be debunking and breaking down the possibility of what Yuji is, why he is so strong, and what is Gege cooking. The Jujutsu rabbit hole has opened up a universe of possibilities based off only a few scenes and very little hints throughout the story. There are statements in recent translations about Harima and Yuji being from back then that need to be addressed, because there is just way too much going on for Gege to sneak some hidden ancient lore by us, or vice versa. The statements could mean something completely different in a whole nother context. I myself am a bit of a geek when it comes to Jujutsu lore, so I hope Gege is plotting a big reveal soon, and I'd like to address some of the conflictions and theories and information surrounding Yuji's origin. So first things first. Yuji, what is this boy? And why was he throwing hands with Sukuna all of a sudden like it's normal? Well, to start from what we know, privy to chapter 143, Yuji Itadori is the biological son of Jin Itadori and Kaori Itadori. Now, unless you're blind, you might have noticed his mother has a giant surgically stitched scar on her forehead, which complicates things and implies there is foul play in how Yuji was conceived. Kaori was a human sorcerer and the late partner of Jin Itadori. As far as we know, Wasuke and Jin are non-sorcerers, while Kaori was a shaman who possessed an anti-gravity technique. It's unknown how the family was connected to the Jujutsu world, like say if Kaori was familiar with the society or how much Wasuke and Jin knew about Jujutsu. However, at some point, Kaori died. In fact, she died without having Yuji in her original life. And Wasuke obviously knew something was amiss, and it would lead to his son's Jin's death if he was to stick with this very suspicious woman. And something very irregular did happen when the sorcerer Kenjaku inhabited Kaori's dead body as a vessel, inherited her technique, and conceived Yuji sometime in 2003. And that is the trigger. Kenjaku is a transcended sorcerer with the innate technique of body hopping. They go through a process where their brain is transferred from one vessel to another, and they are able to live for millennia via the centuries of switching hosts. Think of Kenjaku like Orochimaru's immortality jutsu, or Krang from TMNT. They're an actual brain that goes from body to body, and through a number of loopholes, Kenjaku has inherited many techniques and harnessed much Jujutsu knowledge. Regarding Yuji's family relation, Kenjaku is blood related as a parent because they literally took over the boy's mom and gave birth to Yuji. Now, many fans jump to the conclusion that Yuji is some sort of cursed womb because he is technically blood related to the death paintings. However, Kenjaku in his past vessel with Noritoshi Kamo, he made the death paintings in this way. They had a human mother, plus the cursed spirit that impregnated her, plus Kenjaku's blood mixed in that amalgamation. I do not recommend dwelling on that, but they had 3 parents. Thus, the hybrid wombs are born, cursed-like in nature, and they're like dead fetus wombs that are then incarnated through vessels as cursed objects. It's one of the many effed up experiments in Kenjaku's lifetime, but it makes it so that death paintings are part curse in nature and sons of Kenjaku through his blood. But then Yuji on the other side is instead born technically from a dead woman and conceived through Jin and Kenjaku via Kaori's body. The specifics of how Yuji was gestated and came out is unknown. He could have been a miscarriage, a cursed womb / hybrid, anything. He's basically Frankenstein's monster at this point, but he seems to have been born a normal human on the surface. However, there is so much darkness just surrounding his origin. As we understand, Yuji's sorcerer capability did not awaken until after he ate Sukuna's finger, and then he experienced his cursed energy. Before that, Yuji couldn't even see curses, and his cursed energy was just a normal human's level. However, Yuji's body has always been tough. Always. He was superhuman well before he came into the world of Jujutsu, which brings us to the first point. Yuji was made a vessel. Kenjaku had to create a living being capable enough to harbor and control the legendary demon Sukuna. Normal people would just die or be overpowered by the demonic soul of Sukuna. However, Yuji could not only suppress Sukuna, but also control him like a cage. Outright coexist and suppress the influence of the flesh and the soul, and that speciality seems to come with perks. First, before anything else, Yuji is tough. Before cursed energy, before output, before reinforcement and ability, Yuji is so tough that it's just not human. His durability allows Yuji to stand against many opponents far above him, and at the very least tank the abuse of cursed techniques and cursed energy pelting his flesh. In turn, Yuji is also extremely physically inclined, meaning even without martial arts experience, he is a genius at just using his body and performing maneuvers that put him on the tier of a veteran sorcerer. And recently, that controlled strength has been tempered for so long, but it's now being realized as Yuji challenged Sukuna and unlocked strength that really showed this is more than it seems. Even Sukuna was surprised by Yuji's physical might, and he knew this is Kenjaku's doing. This brat is from back then. He has something that I've seen before. This is sort of the first conflict because now, is what Sukuna's talking about related to chapter 143 with that flashback, being that Sukuna did share memories with Yuji, or is this actually strength that Sukuna has witnessed before, meaning that Yuji is truly a reincarnated sorcerer in the modern era? Now really, would Yuji's origin just stop at Kenjaku messing around and having a kid that merely acts as Sukuna's cage until Sukuna's time is ready? Because Kenjaku clearly recognizes Yuji as nothing more than a cage, like a means to an end. However, Kenjaku still expected much from him. Yuji is someone with no curse technique and a very limited tool set as a sorcerer. So really, what could a prominent person and a sorcerer like Kenjaku who lived through thousands of years even expect from Yuji? It has to be something bigger than even Kenjaku could have expected. He must have had high expectations if he conceived a reincarnated sorcerer. Now, as for the rest of this video, I'll be going over some very heavy Japanese folklore and some opinionated subjects, but I really need to express my thoughts on the implications of Yuji's origin, so I encourage you brothers to try and entertain my theories. Alright, so in chapter 215, I've never quite seen any single comment so ambiguous throughout the Japanese, the TCB, and the Viz translations. Gege was straight up trolling in this cliffhanger because the hot topic is how Sukuna and Uraume implied Yuji looked like a guy from Harima. Harima is an ancient Japanese province established in the 7th century, predating the Heian and Nara era. That's some 1300 years ago. This correlates to many big shot sorcerers who practice divination and annyodo, known as annyoji or exorcist, so Yuji would directly correlate to a person or a family of sorcerers. Or, as the Viz translation implies, Harima is just a paper statue. It's a Harima statue made by Harima Midori, a modern artist, a modern statue from a modern era. Bruh. Obviously, this statue looks just like Yuji's expression here, like a wailing, crying boy, and Uraume regards the shape of his mouth particularly like Yuji. And that's a funny kind of neat reference and all, but I'm sure you guys agree, that's not quite the Harima we had in mind. I think Gege did that ambiguity on purpose, as Yuji's origins would be rather important. He's like the main character, and it'd be very satisfying to see, yet Gege wants to keep subverting expectations. Like, it's almost impossible to tell what the translations mean here. However, today we're actually going to be entertaining the ancient Harima theory, because there is still implication that Yuji has some ancient origins that run far deeper than we could even know. Now, as far as the Harima rabbit hole goes, there is two ancient mythological figures of note relating to Harima province. During the peak of sorcery in the golden age of Heian, there was a particular practitioner of Annyodo named Abe no Seimei. For those not familiar, this is a legendary sorcerer said to be the founder of Annyodo / divination. Just as something like the West has the wizard Merlin, the East has the legend of Abe no Seimei. If any secret big shot sorcerer was revealed to be an ancient incarnation, it would be Abe. They're legendary. Also, Abe is in a very similar situation to Yuji, because Abe is a child born from a human father and a cursed yokai mother. But what's interesting is the clues already in the story that confirm that Abe no Seimei is actually a canon sorcerer in the series, along with another big shot shaman being Ashiya Doman. Now, these were two legendary sorcerers, and most well known for their sorcerer rivalry and Ashiya's exile to the Harima province, the hometown of exorcists. There is actually real evidence both figures are in Jujutsu Kaisen's story, as the star of Seimei is present on the Kamo clan's equipment and used in talismans along with Ashiya's seal. And Ashiya Sadatsuna had developed the simple domain technique in the Heian era, so the Ashiya clan is in JJK's canon. During the Heian era, Abe and Ashiya fought in epic sorcerer duels to prove their worth. Ashiya was known as the evil Doman and a direct rival to the Seimei of justice. One legend involved Doman and the young Seimei in a divination duel to reveal the contents of a particular box. Doman had a person put 15 mandarin oranges into a box and divined that there were 15 oranges in it, already knowing the contents of the box. Seimei saw through the rules and metamorphosized the oranges into rats and stated that 15 rats were in fact in the box, and when the rats were revealed, Doman was shocked and finally defeated in a decisive fight using powerful shikigami. This is an interesting account because, as you may have noticed, in this legend, they are involved in a battle to prove their jujutsu skill and guile. Even back then, no matter the context, sorcerers were nothing more than con artists. In this age, both shamans worked with the Fujiwara clan. Abe was Anmyoji for Fujiwara no Michinaga, and in Ashiya's defeat in exile to Harima, Ashiya was Anmyoji for Fujiwara no Akimitsu. I won't go into detail, but clearly from what we actually know about the Fujiwara clan from Uro Takako, they are powerful bureaucrats during the Heian age and often engaged in infighting throughout the clan, with members killing each other in a struggle over succession of power. Obviously, seeing that Uro was in some sort of assassin / captain position, sorcerers were heavily involved in this, and things like curses, hexes, death, and betrayal, it was very much commonplace, and Uro made that very clear when she was talking about it. Even if Yuji has no relation to either Abe or Ashiya, which I actually hope he is related to either one of them or a big shot sorcerer, those two Anmyoji are sorcerers that are legendary in Japanese mythology. I'd say they're even more legendary than Ryomen Sukuna, and technically they do exist in Jujutsu Kaisen's canon, if Gege wants to go there and explore upon that. But Yuji, he's still from back then, so I'm certain that Yuji's physical toughness and Yuji's resistance is the result of some kind of cursed restriction or genetic origin. Frankly, I think it is funny, but it'd be a little disappointing if Harima is only in context with some silly modern art. Like, what is Yuji's purpose as a vessel? Because throughout the story, it's almost like Yuji's not even recognized as human, he's just Sukuna's vessel. He's too tough as a non-sorcerer, he's much too sturdy as an awakened sorcerer, and he could even suppress the influence of Ryomen Sukuna. Something is going on with Yuji. Despite Yuji's inhumanity, When he addressed Sukuna, and when Sukuna talks to Yuji, Yuji makes his human nature known, and Sukuna validates his nature as a curse. And that sort of yin and yang is made very clear throughout the story of Jujutsu Kaisen. And it brings us to the final theory, being that Yuji could be like the humanity that Sukuna has tarnished. And I already understand, like, the twin theory is so crackpot and out there, trust me, I do know. But like I said, I debunk Yuji's origins, and this theory is by far the craziest. Sukuna obviously has very common themes throughout his character, where he's like this two-faced, four-armed demon of legend, where he has multiple appendages and he's just not human. Whereas he was also a human at one point in his life, but became the fallen and gained these curse-like powers. Because Sukuna actually eats people, and twins are considered a bad omen in Jujutsu Kaisen, and there's plenty of evidence we can see it with Sukuna's appendages and his appearance that he is like this merged being. It could be that Sukuna has consumed his twin and descended into cursehood as the fallen. Of course, one of Gege Akutami's Sukuna inspirations has to do with a in real life 2chan article of a cursed conjoined mummy twin, with the curse being Ryomen Sukuna. And Sukuna is hinted at being an entity like Lord Tengen, where they are ascended beyond curse or human. I think there may be reason that Sukuna could have ingested his twin. However, if that were true, how would a consumed being with his essence molded into his twin be incarnated into a vessel thousands of years later? And that's just Yuji's existence. That's not when Yuji took in Sukuna. If Yuji was Sukuna's remnant or reincarnated twin, Sukuna would have already known, but Sukuna doesn't quite understand what Yuji is. If we're to believe the soul and the body theory, it would be really iffy how Yuji is an incarnated sorcerer twin of Sukuna when Sukuna has already ingested his twin and harnessed their essence inside of him. It's even more questionable considering Kenjaku planned Yuji's birth and conceived Yuji as a sort of cage-like vessel when Kenjaku and Sukuna are actually collaborating together. Yuji's resistance wasn't something Sukuna found favorable, but he was able to build up his strength until the time was right inside of Yuji. And look where we are now. Sukuna doesn't even care about Yuji and has incarnated into Megami's flesh to replenish his power by his own means. I imagine Sukuna and Kenjaku's relationship is very businesslike, considering Uraume is like a in-between and there's subtle hints toward one another's plan. Sukuna is the chaos and Kenjaku is the means to bring about that chaos, so they have mutual interests. Yuji is no longer a part of Sukuna's cycle, and he was casted aside because he has chosen a new vessel. Yuji's compatibility hasn't changed as a vessel. Even Uraume preserved Yuji just in case, but it seems obvious enough that Sukuna doesn't even see any use or any connection to Yuji. I think the twin theory is very interesting, but considering all the possibilities of Yuji's origin, the most likely outcome to me personally is that Yuji is some sort of reincarnation of an ancient sorcerer other than Sukuna. Sukuna actually recalls Yuji's strength from a different time, and he knows Yuji is the result of Kenjaku's twisted exploitation. It doesn't have to be Abe or Ashiadoman. Those are just among the most famous examples of shamans in their era, hailing from that hometown of Harima. But clearly Yuji has some gifted body with the capacity to hold Sukuna, and perhaps even one day to stand against Sukuna's malice and even his overpowered techniques. But I hope you amazing guys enjoyed. This video mainly was just food for thought. Yuji is just in such an odd position regarding his future. He has this resilience about him that makes him stand out so much, but I really just wonder where it all comes from. As always, share your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear all of you brothers' amazing theories and conclusion, but this has been Enemy Stand User, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.